again to our Professional Learning Power Hour. Today we are going to spend some time looking at some of the structures that are for professional learning, and specifically looking at what are those structures that we can use beyond workshops to launch a curriculum. And so for those of you that may be joining us for the first time, I was sharing that this Professional Learning Power Hour series happens on the third Thursday of the month. And we really take a look at what are some of the research and best practices and tools and resources in the marketplace around professional learning. And we use these to have conversations with district leaders across the country about how to put some of that into real practice for educators. And so, we will send a copy of this presentation around that'll have a link that if you all are interested in these like upcoming PL Power Hour webinars, you can register for them. They're free. And again, it's a great way to get some models from other district leaders across the country about how they're ensuring they're providing teachers and leaders with curriculum-aligned professional learning. Okay. So again, I'm Annie Morrison. I'm one of the co-founders of Rivet Education. And today I am joined by two guests, both with Mount Horeb Area School District in Wisconsin. First is Sarah Straka. She's the Director of Instruction for the district. And also Katie Hardiman, who's a first grade teacher in the district. Okay. So we're so excited to have them with us today. But before we dig in, I want to take a moment just to do a quick little introduction about who is Rivet for those of you that may be joining us for our first PL Power Hour series. And so at Rivet, our vision is that every educator in the country receives the best resources and support available so that they are able to provide their students with the educational opportunities they not only want but deserve. And so we contribute to this vision by defining high quality professional learning and then creating tools and services that support both state and local education leaders and putting that definition into practice for teachers. And so our work is really governed by our definition of high quality professional learning, which is informed by the latest research in professional learning, and that's captured in our framework that you see here for professional learning. So our framework starts off with defining the key characteristics of high quality professional learning. So we believe that professional learning, regardless of how it's being delivered, should be equity focused, specific to educators' context. It should be content focused and aligned to high quality instruction materials, should be interactive and collaborative, should address the expectations and motivations of educators and be data driven. And then within those characteristics, we also understand that there are types of high quality curriculum aligned professional learning. And so those types are the adoption, launch, ongoing support for teachers, and system design and leadership support. And regardless of the type of professional learning that you're providing to educators, we believe that you should use multiple structures in which to deliver that PL. And so our framework also recognizes the structures of high quality PL, which are workshops, collaboration or PLCs, coaching and consultation. And so all of, we take this framework and we use it to guide our work. And most importantly, we use it to guide our flagship tool, which is the Professional Learning Partner Guide. So similar to how EdReports reviews curricular materials, the Professional Learning Partner Guide reviews and professional learning organizations that provide professional learning services allied to those materials on EdReports that have a green rating. And all of the organizations that are featured within the Professional Learning Partner Guide have passed our rigorous evaluation process, proving that they do provide high quality curriculum aligned professional learning on the different types we talked about in the framework. So some of the providers in this guide are specialized in helping you adopt a curriculum, some specialize in helping you launch a curriculum, and then some specialize in either providing ongoing support for teachers or that leadership, that systems design and leadership support that our leaders do require. Okay. And then for today's conversation, we are going to focus on the structures of high quality professional learning. and how district leaders can ensure that the professional learning plans that they are creating really utilize multiple structures. I think we see all too often that people really rely heavily on workshops in their annual PL plans, but it really does take that collaboration, those PLCs, that coaching and that consultation with leaders to truly execute a high quality professional learning plan. And so today we have asked both Sarah and Katie to join us because last month we released a case study featuring the Mount Horeb Area School District and their partnership with CESA 2, which is a cooperative educational service agency in Wisconsin. And we're also joined today by some of the members of CESA 2. So I just want to say welcome to that team because they play an integral part in this case study. And I think Sarah would agree, they play a vital role in helping Mount Horeb deliver high quality professional learning to their teachers and leaders. But we decided to do this case study because we've been working with the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction for a couple years now to help them really grow a vendor marketplace of professional learning organizations that can support their school systems in adopting and launching high quality instruction materials. So the state agency and the state overall, chose to invest in high quality instruction materials several years ago, and they wanted to make sure that these districts had the support they need to adopt these materials and then effectively implement these materials. And so they wanted to create a marketplace in which that districts could leverage to support them in that work. And so when we started talking with the folks at the state agency about wanting to do a case study about how a district works with one of these local service agencies, they recommended that we look into Mount Horeb. And we were also delighted to know that they work with CESA 2, which is one of the approved partners in the Wisconsin Professional Learning Partner Guide. So like the national version, this is a Wisconsin state-specific professional learning partner guide that really highlights those organizations specific to Wisconsin. And so I went to Mount Horeb earlier this year and spent a few days in the district and observed classrooms. I sat in on PLCs. I sat in on coaching sessions and observation and feedback sessions. Spent a lot of time talking with Sarah and her principals and some of the teachers like Katie that were just newly adopted and using Bridges in mathematics to learn more about their journey of how they went from adoption through the launch of Bridges. And so what I want to do here is just kind of share a quick video that we put together that kind of tells their story. And so that'll give you a little bit of background knowledge before Sarah and Katie and I start talking about, and they can shed a little bit more light again into their journey.
When we think about educational learning, we want to make sure our kids are actually engaged with the information from the teacher, but then the students engage with the work and they can show their work to their peers and their teachers. So we went through a pretty extensive yet tight process over about a 6-month period to look for what skills, what instructional practices we needed to move the needle with our math.
Oh yeah, I apologize. It's like having some connectivity issues. Let me see if it'll stop buffering soon. If not, we will drop a link to this video in the chat. But the
instruction. Because some people using repeated addition, some people starting with a known fact. The reason we chose Bridges in mathematics was that it really offered the conceptual understanding that our previous resources didn't have for our students. It's a lot more student-centered talking more explaining why a student chose one strategy over another strategy?
In August, we brought the...
Okay, y'all, I'm sorry about that. I'm going to stop the video just because I think it's just going to keep buffering, unfortunately. But Tiager, could you drop the link to this YouTube video in the chat? And again, we're going to share a copy of the presentation today with you all that has this, as you can see, the YouTube link is here on the bottom of the screen. But I encourage you to watch this video. I think it's like you get to hear from some of the educators in Mount Horeb about their experience launching Bridges and like the role of like high quality professional learning that has played in that launch. But let's continue on because I think, sorry about that. Okay. Before I jump in, sorry, real quick, Sarah, I just want to pause for a quick second and see if like anyone has any questions about anything that I've shared thus far or about like why Rivet conducted this case study. If not, I'm going to go ahead and just like jump in and jump into talking with Sarah. I'm going to take a look at the quick chat. And thanks to Tiager for dropping that into the chat for me. Thank you so much. Okay. All right, Sarah. Well, why don't we, before we kind of dig in a little bit on y'all's journey with Bridges, can you just like set the stage for us a little bit and just kind of give people a little bit of context about Mount Horeb, so everybody knows about this great little place.
Sure, will do. So yeah, Mount Horeb Area School District is a suburban school district just outside of Madison, Wisconsin, about 20 minutes outside. We have about 2,500 students in grades 4K through 12. We often say we're big yet small. That's some of our counterparts, other school districts south and west of us maybe have 20 to 60 kids in a graduating class. But then we looked more towards the Madison schools up that way. Maybe they range from 200 to 400 kids per graduating class. But we have about 150 to 200 kids in a graduating class. So we're big yet small, which is pretty neat. We at the elementary level, since this is the focus, have about 7 to 8 teachers per grade level, which has really allowed us to move mountains really, because we have our grade level teams within the same building, which is pretty nice. So all 3rd grade teachers are within the same building that they can collaborate, work on our co-teaching model, work on our launch of our new math program and those kinds of things. Yeah, so we have some unique things that I think other districts don't have that have allowed us to move the needle on some things, but we've definitely had our heartaches and figuring some things out too as we try to move the needle.
Great. And so I think first I want to share with everyone that my experience there in Mount Horeb still to this day gives me goosebumps when I think about it, because I just it was just beyond impressive. I think that what I saw in your district, and just to be clear with everyone, I didn't just visit one school or one classroom within a school. Y'all took me to multiple schools across K-5. I went from kindergarten classrooms to 5th grade classrooms. And not only did I talk to adults, I talked with kids. So I got a group of kindergarten kids, 3rd graders, and 5th graders. So, kids don't lie. So I got the opportunity to talk with a lot of your students, and they are just as excited, and we're having just as much fun that last year as I think the adults were with these new materials. But I think for me, what was really impressive, I think it's just how COVID really forced y'all to get innovative and how y'all approached the launch of this curriculum. And so can you first tell me a little bit about what was the process for adopting Bridges, right? That's a big decision to make a shift and, bring in a new curriculum, math curriculum in your district, especially across K-5. So tell me a little bit more about that process.
Yeah, so we have a curriculum review cycle that we follow. And it was time just to start looking at math. So we started that journey back in the summer of 2019, prior to COVID. And we laid out a plan with our math interventionists, our principals, and myself to do some more learning for staff, do some more research about what a good program would have for us. We knew that our current program, our previous program, really did not hit on the conceptual understanding for students. It was very much the tips and tricks of understanding the math algorithms. And we knew that we had some holes. So within that curriculum review process, we identified those pieces. Then we reached out. I see Mary Mooney on this call. We reached out to DPI. Mary's the math consultant there, and also CISA to the math consultants and the consultants there as well, to help us walk through the process of visioning what good math instructional practices should be. And we knew we needed to lean on our staff. So we invited Mary and our CISA 2 representatives here to talk through what good math instructional practices are, did some visioning with staff. Within the visioning activities, staff identified like 4 big areas for us that they really wanted us to improve upon. They range from having hands-on opportunities for kids, having manipulatives for kids. We knew we needed more number talk. We need the kids talking, less of the teacher talk, more of the student talk. We knew we needed teacher-friendly materials, things really laid out, especially when you launch a new program. Elementary teachers do everything. So we really wanted to make sure the resources were friendly for staff. And then we knew we want a resource that was inclusive for all learners, that students can, within, for example, Bridges workplaces, be differentiated for students, that students could be successful with that. So we also looked at ed reports. You talked about ed reports, Annie, to look for those programs that rated highly there. And then we just started to dig into the work, dig into the resources, and we found that Bridges fit some of the criteria that we were looking for. And we were going to adopt and implement everything, but then COVID hit, so we had to readjust a little bit as well.
Got it. So y'all started, if I remember correctly, y'all started with kindergarten all in, right? So for those less familiar with Bridges, there's like multiple components of Bridges. So there's like the main curriculum, and there's like the number corner. And so kindergarten did all components that first year. And then the 1st through 5th just piloted number corners. Is that correct? And then last year, everyone went all in, full curriculum, K-5, right?
Correct. Yeah, we had to pivot slightly. Okay. Where yes,
okay.
Correct. Grades 1 through 5 just did number corner, understood the language, the sequencing, the layout, became more comfortable with that before launching into the full program. And kindergarten did launch because their students didn't come in with any prior knowledge of a previous program. They weren't really happy with what was happening with the previous program. And the kindergarten team is a go-get-em team, so they went all in.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's dig into that launch plan. So I know that you all, as I said before, I think work with CISA 2 to really create an innovative approach here, in part due to COVID, but I think in part due to, I think, you know, CISA 2 like having some of this like expertise in these materials and knowing kind of what it was going to take, and knowing kind of like, especially in that first year of Bridges, there's a lot of materials for teachers to master and stuff. So I think y'all kind of like looked at all those different needs to create a launch plan that really isn't your typical launch plan. Like I said, I think districts tend to default to workshops when they launch a curriculum, right? We do like maybe a 3-day workshop in the beginning of the year, and maybe we do a couple more workshops throughout the year. But you all didn't necessarily go that route. So can you tell me about like your professional learning plan and kind of how it was developed?
Sure. Yeah. Even prior to launching Bridges, we had Stephen Mialovic come into. He was our main CISA 2 math consultants prior to Latricia coming as well. But Stephen was already in our grades 3 through 5 building, working with staff on instructional practices as we were looking at resources to purchase. So we had started that journey on what good math instruction should look like in the classroom. But then as we were looking at the rolling out of Bridges, we knew we had to sort of have a 2-pronged approach. One, working with the Math Learning Center and the Bridges resources about that more technical resource specific focus for our staff. But then we also knew that we wanted to continue working with CESA 2 more on the instructional practices in the classroom for math. So we had that two-prong approach where we were working with the Math Learning Center 2 to 3 times throughout a school year. And then we were going to work with CESA 2 on those sort of off months in between and alternate with the Math Learning Center. But because COVID is COVID, we didn't really want to have as many virtual opportunities for staff to learn. It's hard to really learn a program, a new resource through the virtual learning. So we had to pivot slightly, and we did a little bit less training with the Math Learning Center. And we did a little bit more training with CESA 2 because they were able to come in face-to-face with us. Even that though, we originally with CESA 2 had half-day trainings per grade level. So let's say in the morning, the whole kindergarten team was going to do the training with CESA, in the afternoon, the first grade team, and keep going that way. But the sub situation, there's a lack of substitute teachers during COVID, and even now. So we had to shift our model yet again. And we started to bring Stephen Malovic and Latricia Johnson into our grade level team meetings. And for that 45 minutes to an hour, they would rotate amongst the grade level teams and work with them on the Bridges resources, work with them on teacher clarity, work with them on looking at assessments. They really customized the instructional practices learning to Bridges for us, and staff really bought into that. And then we also started to do peer-to-peer classroom observations, which I don't know if you want me to get into yet, Annie. I'm getting probably ahead of things.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So the peer-to-peer classroom observations were where teacher A would sign up to go and see teacher B within their grade level. And then our CESA 2 coaches, either Stephen or Latricia, would sort of be that whisper coach for that teacher coming into their peers classroom. So teacher B would observe teacher A for a while, about 20 minutes, and then they would step out into the hallway and debrief with our CESA 2 coach about what they saw in the classroom, what the instructional moves were, how maybe whiteboards were used. And that the learning was more for the visiting teacher than it was for the teacher demonstrating the lesson. And then they would switch and roles would be reversed, and teacher A would go in teacher B's classroom. Then that learning was then brought back to their team meetings as well. So we've been working pretty hard in really doing professional learning communities better in Mount Horeb. And so we don't want the team meetings necessarily to focus on field trips and logistical technical things. We're trying to move the needle and having teachers talk about instructional practices. So the fact that teachers can go and see each other's classrooms and talk about what they're seeing with their teammates in the grade level team meetings has been great. We're definitely not there in perfecting everything, but we started the journey last year, and we're going to be continuing it even more this year and in future years.
And I think when I was there, I had the chance to sit in with some teachers, and they really seemed to really just like love this model. I think, what I heard from them was that first and foremost, it was just like in the moment, right? And so it helped them even within the same grade level, like the pacing may be a little different across like classrooms, right? And so one teacher may be teaching a lesson on Tuesday, then another teacher is teaching on Friday. And so they were like, if I'm the teacher teaching it on Friday, I might go sit in on a teacher's classroom that's teaching it earlier in the week and just like see how he or she delivered that lesson, debrief with them and say like, oh, why did you do that? Talk that through with me, or maybe that didn't go so well. What would you have done differently that I could maybe already make changes for in Friday's lesson? And so it was like that in the moment professional learning that they were giving one another that I found impressive, and two, they seemed to like really enjoy. I also heard from like some of your veteran teachers. I think there's a teacher, a fifth grade teacher that I talked with who I want to say maybe she's been teaching for like 20 years. And she was like, I think a lot of times people come to us as the veteran teachers to have like all the answers. she was like, but I've learned from some of our newer teachers this year, having to like the opportunity to observe their classrooms as much as they are learning from me, you know? And she was like, and again, it's like, I'm learning something that I can immediately put into practice in my classroom. It's not like I'm going to a workshop and learning something that I can't touch for like another unit or something like that. It's like immediate feedback, immediate strategies that I can implement that they seem to really appreciate. But rather than me talking about how teachers like this, Katie, I would love to hear from you. Kind of like, what is your experience? Because you're a new teacher. You were a new teacher last year. And so, you know, what has your experience been, not only like being new to Bridges, but being like newer to the teaching profession as a whole? Like, what was that experience like for you, and having this type of like more dynamic, responsive professional learning available to you?
So this will be my third year teaching. So my first year teaching was right like in the middle of COVID. We were virtual. We were starting to like talk about Bridges. We didn't start implementing. So I taught a year of our curriculum that we had before this. And then like last year was, like Sarah said, like we went all in, and it was great. I think that we did start the year with like doing some trainings like all together. And then the most powerful part, Annie, like you've been talking about, was definitely the peer-to-peer. I think that our mindsets all kind of shifted. Like you said, we had a lot of veteran teachers on my team. I was the only like first few year teacher, probably by like 15 years on my team. So I think for them, it was different for me to come into their room and like their mindset had to change from like, I'm here to learn from you, not to critique you. And I think that was a really powerful thing that CISA helped us do. And especially when they come in, like Latricia came with me when I was observing. And then for a veteran teacher, like you mentioned, to observe me was powerful as well. And then in the conversations that we'd have with Latricia, us two teachers together, like it was really cool to see that they learned something from me, and something I used, maybe in like the language I was using, that they were used to the other math language that they used in the other curriculum. So, and I was like more fresh right out of college. So I had all of these vocabulary terms like right on the tip of my tongue. So then like they started like using it too. So it was just so powerful, like to actually be in the classroom, and having somebody there with me, like I mentioned, was just as impactful, because I didn't necessarily know what I was always looking for. I was new, like I didn't know necessarily what instructional moves even were, to be honest with you. So when I had Latricia there with me, like, and we talked about it, she's like, oh, that's like, yeah, that's exactly what we were looking for. It was powerful too. So I'm excited that I think this is like a movement in the right direction for our districts, that we're more comfortable like seeing each other. We're not just like veteran and new teachers anymore. Like this model helped us all feel like we are all on the same playing field, and like we all do our job great, and we can still learn from each other no matter how long we've been teaching.
Great. Yeah, thank you. And y'all, I've got to give credit where credit is due. I told Katie the other day that I talk about her all the time. Because I think one of my most memorable moments from Mount Horeb was observing her in her classroom. Because I went in, it was just like, oh, this is a first grade classroom. And I observed her lesson. It was a lesson like on, counting penguins. And it was just a great lesson. And I left, and, I don't know if it was Latricia or someone else was like, this is like her first year, teaching, or, she's a new teacher. And I was like, what? Like, I would have never known, like, if had someone not told me that, I would have never known that, like, she's somewhat fresh out of college here, because her transitions, like, were so smooth. Kids were super engaged. It was just like really impressive to see that not only a novice teacher, but a teacher new to with a brand new curriculum. And I observed these lessons like towards the beginning of this year. So it wasn't like I was even in your classroom at the end of the school year. Like, you were halfway in at that point. That I was just like really impressive to see. So I talk about you all the time. So I just wanted to share that with like all of our audience today.
That means a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I'm curious. We've mentioned CISA 2 a lot, and again, I think they are one of the main reasons too why we wanted to do this case study, because at Rivet, we think that there are very specific times when bringing in an outside expert is like really important. And I think in the adoption and launch of a new curriculum is one of those very specific times where having an outside expert come in that is not only an expert on, professional learning in general, but also on the materials that you're using. And so we wanted to highlight like the value of that type of partnership. And I use the word partnership intentionally here because that's what it is with you guys. That was clear in my observations, is that they are partners to you all. They're not like a contracted vendor, right? They are a partner. And so I'd love to know what has been that partnership to you, and especially to you as the director of instruction, Sarah, I'll ping this to you first. Like, what has been that value to you to have them as a partner for you in the launch of Bridges?
Yeah, that's great. Really good question. I'm technically a department of one for teaching and learning. I don't have an assistant. I have an administrative assistant, but we don't have a very large department. I collaborate a lot with our director of student services, with our superintendent, with our principals. But when we're thinking about professional learning, thinking about curricular resources, I really look for other people to lean on and learn from. And Stephen and Latricia at CISA were my learning partners during this time. They were able to problem solve with me when we didn't have enough subs or when we had to pivot for X, Y, and Z. They really brought to the table the idea of the peer-to-peer classroom support. They brought the idea to the table about them being in the classroom as that like whisper coach, talking through those instructional moves. If they didn't bring that to the table, we wouldn't be even on this call today. So being able to collaborate and problem solve with them has been huge. And having that partnership extend over multiple years with the multiple touch points has been very important as well. It just helped us become better prepared and be able to dive deeper because we had that continued partnership.
Yeah, great. And I guess like Katie, for you, I think you touched on this a little bit too, but like, what has it meant to you, or like what has been like the biggest value add for you in like having CISA 2 like there with you along the way as well?
Yeah, I even felt like I was partnered. I worked a lot with Latricia. She was the one that would come along with me. I volunteered pretty frequently with Straka. I always throw up my name out there because I loved the peer-to-peer observations anytime we did the round. So I got to know Latricia a little bit. I even felt like I partnered with her. When we would like step outside of the classroom, she would turn the learning to me. Like, what did you notice? And why did they do that? And we talk about what were the kids learning? Like, did they know what they were learning? I think the most valuable part with working with them was like Latricia helping me see like, what's the end goal here? Like, why are we teaching this lesson? And that's what we need to instill in our kids. So like, she helped me like get that clarity of like everything we teach, like, let's get back to those objectives. Like, why are we doing this? And do the kids know why we're doing this? That was like the most powerful thing for me that I think a lot of teachers took away, that like, let's just tear back like all of that fluff and like just get back to the core. And if you don't have time for all that fluff, like that's okay, because this is why we're here and we're focused on our I can statements. And that was like her and I, my biggest takeaway from us working together.
I might add a little bit more there too.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because Latricia and Stephen really helped us focus on that teacher clarity piece that Katie's talking about, making sure that students are aware of what they're learning and why they're learning it within the lesson. It really actually helped shape our district focus about teacher clarity K-12. And that's the work that we're going to be doing with some instructional coaches that we have now been able to have 2 instructional coaches within our district for the upcoming school year who will also help with this work. So CISA really helped lay our focus as a school district in future years as well.
Speaking of future years, you guys have a new school year fast approaching. And so I'm curious to know, Sarah, like what adjustments have y'all made to your professional learning plan for this upcoming school year based on like all of your lessons learned from last year?
Yeah, because we have some ESSER funding, ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 funding, we were able to add another math coach, math interventionist at our elementary level. So that brings us up to 2 total for K-5. We'll have 1 person in our K2 buildings and another person in our 3-5 buildings who will spend half their time doing intervention and half their time continuing this coaching work, supporting the peer-to-peer observations, those kinds of things. So that's been nice that the teachers who were participating in those are coaches now. So they've been on that journey. And then we are still having Stephen and Latricia come in to model and support the coaches, see what they're doing with teachers. So like a whisper coach of a whisper coach to then we'll be doing that for the first semester monthly, and then pulling back and letting our instructional coaches take over the work, because I'm sure we'll need Stephen and Latricia in another way, in some other capacity at our secondary level.
And I think that's a really important point. I think, you know, these, like I said earlier, there's a time and a place for outside expertise, but it is not like the plan that they should be there heavy-handed supporting you from now until eternity, right? Like, I think part of their role is to build that internal capacity with you all. And I think, so I think it's like exciting to know that you all recognize that. So they're going to spend that time with the coaches, but then they are going to, you know, step back because like you do want to build that internal capacity within your district, because that's what's going to sustain the long-term success of these materials. And I think that's something too that's really important to like focus on, is that like your partner is helping you build that capacity. Well, I want to make sure we have time for questions from the audience, because I know like after hearing this, people probably have a ton of them. But I'll leave you like with one last question, and I'll kind of pose this to both of you guys. You know, at Rivet, of course, we're biased that like curriculum aligned professional learning is really important. But I would love to know kind of like what lessons has this journey taught you all about the value of like grounding professional learning and the conversations teachers are having about instruction in the materials that they're using day to day. And Katie, why don't we start with you?
Sure. I think this makes me think of like our PLC time together every week. Like we've been working really hard on, like Sarah had mentioned, like just focusing on like reflecting on our data and like student learning outcomes. And I think my biggest thing through this was, let's just like focus on, like I said before, like what's the target here, what's our target goal. And as a grade level, like we're doing that too, and we're trying our best in our PLCs to like really reflect on the data and the assessment scores that we've used, and then coming together as a team to like move forward and how can we go from here. I think that sometimes in the past, like we got boggled down on like, well, they just can't do it right now, like the kids, they're not ready. And sure, that's the answer sometimes, but sometimes it's like reflecting on our own teaching practices. And I think Bridges and CISA and Latricia and Stephen, like they're the resources that we've used to like help our students like get to where they need to be, especially coming off of a COVID year. It's been really challenging. So through this whole process, like to be open-minded about like what our kids can do and lean on each other, like in our PLCs, like I mentioned, and like changing our mindset to let's learn from each other and help each other. Like they're all of our students. They're not just yours. Like all these first graders are our kids. So let's like move forward together and leaning on people like Latricia and Stephen to like be there and help us get there.
I think there's many lessons. I'll try to answer questions on the chat while I give my lessons as well, because I think some things are overlap. But one piece is that we knew we had to get teacher buy-in slowly. So Katie, as she mentioned, was one of our early adopters of, yes, I want to get in someone's classroom, or yes, I'll have someone come in my classroom. So with each round that we did the peer-to-peer observations, so we started these in December, and then we had another round, I think in February, and another round in March. More and more people were interested, wanting to learn more. We just really had good steam running forward. So by the end of the year, I think about 70% of all our elementary staff participated in one of the peer-to-peer classroom rounds. So that's pretty good within the first year without saying you have to do it. Next year, though, we are looking for our staff quarterly to get into another peers classroom to continue this work. So we're going to try to systematize it a little bit more. And it's just going to become, this is what we do at Mount Horeb. Hopefully we'll get to that point. But I think a couple other ahas that we had is really shifting the cognitive load back to the students in math. And hopefully then as we move forward, we'll in other subject areas, take the instructional practices from what we're doing with math and transferring them to the other content areas that elementary teachers focus on with kids. And then really looking to provide more structures for teachers to grow, whether it is in these peer-to-peer classroom visits, whether it's finding ways that everyone is engaged and participates during their team meeting times, whether it's sharing data like Katie's saying, but just making sure that we're not siloed in what we do. We're collaborative and we're partners in what we do to focus on kids learning. It's not about the teaching, it's about really what are kids learning. So those are some of my ahas. It's been a great journey. I joked with the team a couple of weeks ago during our summer data retreat student success summit that, can you imagine where we would be with math if we didn't do all these things? If it was like a one and done, it would be definitely a different comfort level for staff, different implementation and different successes or no successes. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's one of my favorite quotes from Latricia in the video. It's like one and done workshops do not work. And I'm like, yes. I have that on a bumper sticker for like all the nations to hear. They don't. And like workshops are great, but like that can't be the end, right? Like that can't be the end. There has to be follow up to that. And I think that you guys have figured out like a really good model for that. Want to share my screen again because I know we have some questions. I know there's been a couple questions in the chat, and I think Sarah, you've addressed some of these. But one of the questions I saw was like, what are y'all doing to like monitor, your PL plan? Like, how are you? What data, like tools, or are you using to really monitor the success of this plan and know that it's working, and like know that teacher practice is improving, student achievement is improving?
Yeah, I have a couple different ways. Granted, it's only been 1 year of doing this, so we're refining as we go. But in looking at our forward exam results in math, just at the elementary level, grades 3 through 5, the percent of students who are advanced or proficient is already above our pre-COVID percentages and numbers. So within 1 year, we got out of our COVID slump with 2 years ago's results, and we're already higher than we were when we were prior to COVID. And then we did have a walkthrough form that we were going to use with staff and collect data on what they were seeing. But staff was a little hesitant to have this new experience and the walkthrough tool. So we just provided the walkthrough form as a paper copy look-fors that they could use if they wanted to help guide what they were observing in the classroom. But we are going to be looking to have more of a universal look-fors form for teacher clarity and keep it very simple moving forward to start collecting data. So that's how we're going to move forward there. Annie, we can't hear you again.
Sorry. And again, if you all have any other questions, please drop those into the chat or the Q&A box, either one. I'm just going to go back through. I think we had a few more questions. I know, Jennifer, you said you were going to address some of those. Did you, Jennifer, listen to me, Sarah, in your responses? I think there was a question too about, did you rotate partners in peer-to-peer observations and feedback?
Yeah, it went back to the teacher buy-in piece, who was interested in doing it. I had to call some people and say, would you please do this? I have a pretty good relationship, and Katie could probably attest to this, with majority of our staff, and they know I'm there for them. And so if I need something from them, they are often there for me too. So that's been part of it. Just having those relationships built has helped move this work forward, and finding teams that were comfortable observing each other, but also looking at the teacher schedules logistically and figuring out who would be interesting time-wise to pair up together was also a piece of it. So we tried to rotate partners and get everyone involved as much as possible, but I think we'll have a better rotation moving forward into this coming school year as everyone will be participating.
I feel like the buy-in too, like once we had a couple people that were like, yes, I'm so excited to do this. And then we shared about it. That was so powerful. Like we didn't share anything negative at all about the person. Like all we talked about was the noticings. That is it. And so when we shared about that, then people were like more comfortable and open to the process as well.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine there's was a little bit of hesitation all around, but I would say that I didn't see any people that were just like, this is the worst thing ever when I was there. I think it's just in general, I saw just the teachers really being responsive to this new approach. And then, and Tiago, let me know if I'm missing anything. I think I'm going to go ahead, just for the sake of time, move us on. If people continue to have more questions, go ahead. But I did want to just kind of reframe what we saw here in our observations and what we put in the case study is kind of y'all's keys to success with launching Bridges and kind of keys to your partnership with CESA 2. And feel free to tell me if there's any color you want to add to this. But I think first, you all started with identifying a problem. Like you said, y'all had a new, I think, math coordinator or someone that came into the district who realized students weren't learning math in the way that they should. And so y'all saw that as a need, and that your materials weren't going to get you there. Your current materials weren't going to get you there. And then, so that at that point, that's what you all brought in, leverage your partnership with CESA 2 to say how can you help us solve for this problem? And then I think y'all worked with CESA 2 and your teachers. And I think that's an important part of this too, is that, Sarah, you and Stephen and Latricia didn't sit in a room together to create a vision of what you all wanted students to be doing in math. It really was a vision that you all created with your K-5 math teachers. And then you use that vision as the basis for reviewing and selecting Bridges. And then I think you all then created a plan, and again, an innovative plan that utilized multiple structures of professional learning. So the workshops, the collaboration, the coaching, to ensure that all of your teachers not only receive that initial foundational training from the Math Learning Center of what is Bridges, but that follow-up training and coaching support from CESA 2 to make sure they had that ongoing support to be able to use those materials effectively last year. And then finally, y'all are executing this plan, and thankful for the question in the chat of and y'all are monitoring the progress of this plan. So I think that's an important piece as well, that you all are just this is how it's going to be, or plowing forward. Y'all are really getting feedback from your teachers. You all are observing classrooms and making sure that the plan that you have in place is the right plan. And as you shared today, y'all made adjustments already going into this upcoming school year to modify your professional learning plan. And so I just wanted to share that, these were the keys that we saw to success of your successful implementation of Bridges. Is there anything either one of you would add to that maybe is a key to success that I didn't cover?
No, just the flexibility piece that you mentioned, and having the learning happening in real time. It's not another thing or another time that staff have to participate in. It is in real time, getting real feedback that they can implement that day or the next day, and then having the follow through of coming back to allow more opportunities for that to occur.
Great. Well, again, I can't thank the two of you. Before we share kind of some calls to action with some of our participants today, again, I just want to take a moment to not only thank you for joining us today, but thank you for opening your doors to me to come in earlier this year. And again, really observe one of the most impressive launches of a new curriculum that I've ever seen. So thank you for that. And I really do look forward to like following y'all's success over the next several years. So thank you. Before we do leave today, I know that we have like a variety of guests joining us today's webinar. And so we wanted to leave you guys with a few like takeaways. So for those of you joining us on today's call that are school and school system leaders, we encourage you to use the Professional Learning Partner Guide. And for those of you joining us today in Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Professional Learning Partner Guide, to find a provider that can support you in either adopting or launching a new curriculum. Again, like that is a time where having an expert really matters. And a lot of times that expertise, as they would tell you, is not able to be found within the district because these materials are new to everybody in the district. So having someone that can come in with that expertise really matters during those times. And then also, you know, if you all are curious about to know like how effective is your current professional learning plan, this is something that we at Rivet can help you do to do a diagnostic of your professional learning plan, specifically your curriculum line professional learning plan, to figure out like if it's truly meeting the needs of your teachers and leaders. And then also we're launching a new tool called Rivet Connect and next month that's going to allow you all to get support and post RFPs related to high quality instruction materials or high quality professional learning, and allow the providers in the Professional Learning Partner Guide to be notified of those opportunities so that they can bid on your proposals. And for LEAs, and again, this is kind of an ask for you all that are like school system leaders on today's call. We are looking to expand our case studies. So the first, this one with Mount Horeb is our first case study. But we're really looking to create additional case studies that really illuminate all the aspects of Rivet's framework for high quality professional learning. And so specifically, we're looking for districts who've worked with a professional learning partner to develop and execute PL plans related to engaging multiple stakeholders in the review and selection of high quality instruction materials, using PLCs to provide ongoing support to teachers on those materials, and supporting leaders in creating the systems and structures needed to support HQIM implementation. So if like you see some of these examples and you're like, that's us, that's my district, we do this really well, reach out to us at info@riveteducation.org, and we'd love to start a conversation about how you may be our next featured district. And then real quick for state education leaders that may be joining us today, again, if like scaling high quality instruction materials and professional learning is something you're really wanting to invest in across your state, this is something that Rivet can help you with. Both my colleague Litzy and I, both with Louisiana Department of Education, doing this work for several years and are happy to help you do it in your state. We can also, like we did in Wisconsin, create state-specific professional learning partner guides. So if you're wanting to create a specific vendor marketplace for your state, let us know. And again, the Rivet Connect tool that we're launching will also allow state agencies to post RFPs or service requests related to high quality instruction materials and professional learning in the tool and notify our providers in the PLPG. And then finally, if you're a professional learning organization joining us today, and I know several of you are, just a quick note that our next review cycle for the PLPG launches next week. And so check out our application overview for details about that. Also check out our new scoring and evidence guide to better understand how we evaluate professional learning organizations and their services, and then contact our director of the PLP, Jennifer Wells, if you have questions. Okay. And then again, we'll share this presentation with everyone, and we have a list here of some of the resources that we either talked about on today's call, or again, that can help you in your work to provide high quality curriculum aligned professional learning to the teachers and leaders in your states and school systems. And then again, if you have questions, just please reach out to us. Again, I'm Annie Morrison. I'm one of the co-founders. My address here is on the screen, or if you just have general inquiries, just reach out to us at our generic inbox. But again, thank you so much, all of you, for joining today. I hope that having the opportunity to hear from Sarah and Katie has been illuminating for you all. And really, as we like gear up for the 2022-23 school year, I hope there's some good like nuggets here that you learned from them today that you can put in place in your own school system. So again, thank you so much. And we hope you join us for our September Professional Learning Power Hour series. Thank you, everybody.